Hi guys, Ted Argyle again from the Cudgee Cabin. Today I'm just going to do a video on how I construct the tyre wall. I'm actually going to get you to come along with me and show you how the wall's actually constructed, how I put the tyres in place, how I fill them and what I fill them with. So I'll just turn the camera around and we'll start the process. Here we go guys, so we're on the tyre wall. I'm just going to show you how this tyre wall is constructed. So as I mentioned in the previous video, it's a double tyre wall. The premise of a double tyre wall is to produce a building which is going to require minimal heating and cooling 12 months of the year. I'll explain more about that in another video, but in this video I just want to show you how the tyres are put in place, how they're constructed, how they're assembled and stuck together, so you get a bit more of an idea of what's going on. So the first thing I do is I've got a string line set up which runs the full width of the building to make sure we get everything fairly straight. There are a couple of sections which are a bit out, and that's okay, because once we get the wall fully completed we'll be able to shore that up with some treads of tyres, and I'll explain what that means later on. And obviously the render that goes on will take out a lot of those imperfections, but for the most part we try to stick exactly on the string line, as you can see here. So I'll just kick that into place. There we are. So once it's sitting on that string line, then it's just a matter of screwing it into place. So I screw it into 5 points. Now you'll notice I've got these little voids here, little voids of gaps, and we have to fill up with something. I'll show you what to do with that in just a moment. So just give me one moment. I'll just turn the camera off and show you how I screw it into place. There we go. So you can see I've got the roofing screws into 4 points of the tyre, and then we have it screwed to the one that's right next to it here. So if I just grab that with my hand, that's not going anywhere. And the whole purpose of screwing it into place, it serves no structural integrity, but it just means that when we start filling it with soil, it's not going to move all over the place. Now, how do we deal with these voids? That's what we're going to talk about next. So what we do is we get a reciprocating saw, which looks like a big, how would you explain it, like a big bread knife, and we cut the tyre. We cut an existing tyre. So we get the treads off it. So we get the treads which are here. Here's one I prepared earlier. And what we do is we take those treads and we tuck them into those voids there to cover that void up. So now you can see that void is covered, and then we'll stick one over here to cover that void, and we stick one in the centre as well. So we end up with 3 parts of the tread which cover the holes that are created from having the bricks layered. Sorry, bricks I mean tyres. So you can see here that these tyres are laid like bricks. So you have one course which is half a tyre off, so it ends up with being structurally stronger, just like a brick wall, and which means you're going to end up with this, because of the shape of the tyre, you're going to end up with this void in the centre or off to the side. So that's where we fill that with that, and I'm going to screw that in place right now. So excuse me for a moment. There we go. So you can see I've got 2 treads in place there to cover those voids. And I need to put one which will cover the centre point here to ensure that no clay slips through the holes and ends up in the middle of our wall. So I've actually just run out of tread, so I'm going to go cut a tyre now, so you can come along with me and watch that. So when we finish cutting the tyre, we end up with these treads. Yeah, and we also end up with the centre, which we tuck into the tyre so there's no waste left over. So I'll take you over to the tyre wall now and show you how that's put together. So here we are back at the tyre wall. So you can see I end up with that little void in the centre that needs to be filled as well. So usually I'll take the shortest piece of tread. So we always end up with, I try to cut these to about 400mm in length. But because of the length of the tyre, I always end up with one short one, so that's going to be this one here. I'll plonk that in place and then I screw it in place. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So there we are. So there's how we filled those voids. So again, the tyre wall is, I'll just jump off the wall for a second and show you from the side. So you can see how it's constructed in, and it's got every second course is half a tyre off. So you end up with a stronger structure, just like a brick wall. But again, in sacrifice, what we sacrifice is we end up with a hole in the tyres between those two tyre walls. So we fill our tyre with the tread to ensure that no material falls out into the centre cavity. On the outside, it's going to be rendered with a clay lime render, so that's not really an issue on the outside. But certainly inside, we don't want dirt falling into this cavity here. So to ensure that doesn't happen, we fill that with the tread. So I examined or tried to look at a variety of different ways to fill those voids. I looked at a variety of different materials, and I thought, well, why not use what we've got? This is never going to rot out, so that seems to be the best option to me. Plus, it's again taking a material that would normally go to landfill or require a lot of processing to convert into something else, straight into the tyre wall. So now what we do is we end up with these round bits, I don't know what you call that, the side wall of the tyre, and that goes into the tyre wall, that goes into the tyre as well, to ensure that there's no waste at the end of the building that we have to throw away. So I'll just tuck that in place and I'll show you what that looks like. So here we go. I'm not quite sure if you can see that clearly on the camera, but you can see I've tucked those two side walls of the tyre in. So now there's no waste. So let me tell you, the tyre I cut goes in to fill the voids, and then the side wall goes into the tyre as well to ensure that there's no waste. There's one other step before we start filling. In fact, no, we do one bucket full, and then I'm going to show you what we do after that with some other general waste. Excuse me. So here we go. So I've got one bucket of material in there, and I've just squashed that down with a sledgehammer. Apologise for the panting, but it's always hard work. I've just had to cut it across the block and put it in place. So the next step, once I got the first bucket in, is I grab general waste. Now this is waste that we can't compost. So all of our food waste at home goes to chickens or to a worm farm, or sometimes is buried. So if we have for example, a full chicken, what are you going to do with all the bones? We just bury that in the backyard somewhere, and eventually that rots down. But we'll talk about more of that perhaps in another video. But I do have general waste here, stuff that we can't reuse or recycle, either from my work. I'm a martial arts teacher by trade, so you wouldn't think there'd be much waste in a martial arts school, but there's always bits of plastic to process, and when you're buying student uniforms or gloves, there's always packaging material that comes around equipment that we buy in, and that plastic needs to go somewhere. Most people just throw it in the tip or throw it in the bin. We're trying to take that waste and put it into a place in there. So we put it in the tyre wall. It's not going to disintegrate over time because it's not going to be exposed to moisture or air. So it will just basically be part of the infill, but because it's plastic is so pliable, it's going to sandwich up really tight and will take up no space whatsoever. So I'm just going to take you on a little trip, grab some general waste, and we'll pop that in there. So I have all of our general waste in these large bins, which I got off a farmer. A couple of heavy bags there from work, which are past their use-by date. So I've run about 3 heavy bags through the tyre wall so far. What I do is I take the rags out, I run them through the tyre wall, and then I use the material on the outside, the vinyl, and I put them in a tyre wall as well. I cut it all up so it's all small pieces. So let's just grab some general waste. I also have a pallet bin set up here for general waste as well, so you can see here some old matting and old, even things like this whole bit of plastic here, that can go into the tyre wall. If it's anything of bulk, I'll cut it up a little bit or break it up with a sledgehammer and then plonk it in so it takes up no space, because again, the plastic serves no structural integrity or insulative quality in of itself, unless it's packed in really tight, and we've talked about that before in other videos. But this, obviously, we can't put that in the tyre wall as is. It needs to be broken up a little bit so that when it's packed in with everything else, it takes up no space. So we've also got some black plastic from a concreting job we had done here that was left over. Heavy bags, more plastic. We've got some old clothing here, some old shoes, these kinds of things. So we'll take a couple of these items and we'll show you how they plonk in the tyre wall. So here we are. So we take something like a shoe, that type of structure. What we'll do with that type of item is we'll tuck that right underneath the rim, and I'll slam that in with the sledgehammer so it goes right up against the side wall. We get other generalised things like this. Everybody's processed this before. It's come off, what's that come off? Strawberries. So this is what they call single-use plastic, which is a nightmare for the environment, because once it breaks down, I'm not quite sure if you're aware, but as far as I understand, they've developed these single-use plastics which break down. Now they say that they break down and are compostable. A lot of them are not. What tends to happen is that they break down to a finer particle, which become more of an environmental hazard than this. If everything was to stay this shape and size, then an animal can't really ingest that. But when it gets to microscopic bits of plastic and small bits of plastic, animals ingest it and ends up in our waterways. It becomes a real issue. So we take items like this, which we've got from home, and we tuck that in as is. Again, anything that's of a bulk of that size, we tuck right under the tyre wall. Sorry, the side wall of the tyre. I'll slam it in with the sledgehammer so it ends up packed up right against the edge. What else have we got here? An old peg that can go in. Plastic forks. Again, other bits of single-use plastic from nuts. A whole hammer. So I'm not going to go through the whole process of airing a dirty laundry and showing all the rubbish. But we basically take about half of a shopping bag full of soft plastics. Anything hard will go right up against the edge of the tyre wall. I'll pack it in really tight. Anything soft will just sit on top, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's full. So here we go. That's what our general waste looks like. It looks like most people's rubbish bin. Again, there's nothing here that's compostable, so we're not sticking food waste or anything like that that's going to stank up the tyre. Again, as I said before, any food waste goes to our chickens or worm farm. But all soft and hard plastics we try to put through this process so that we're managing our waste on site rather than taking it elsewhere, so it ends up polluting the environment. Now again, there's a layer of soil underneath this, or clay I should say, and then be 4 buckets of material on top of that. So it's all sandwiched in really, really tight. So I'll pack that in a little bit and show you what it looks like just before we start filling. So there it is, tucked in a little bit. Now we start filling it with clay. So there's 5 buckets of clay in each tyre. I'll put the next bucket in so you can see how that plastic just disappears. So here you go. That's what it looks like when we've got the second bucket in. So you've basically got a layer of clay, a layer of plastic, which would normally end up in landfill, another layer of clay, and then we have 3 more buckets to go in. I'm not going to bore you with filling that. I'm sure you can figure that out. It's just a matter of squashing it in with a sledgehammer. So that's my best friend right there. I use that to squash all the material in, or to sandwich it in. I do have a ramming tool that runs off an air compressor, but that's currently being repaired. So that certainly makes my job a lot easier, but when that's not in use, it's a sledgehammer, and it's just sweat equity, just as hard work getting 5 buckets of material into a fairly small space. But what you end up with is a tyre brick that looks like this. So that is heavy as hell, and that's not moving anywhere. And of course we're taking something that's normally thrown away or takes a lot of processing to convert into something else, and using it in its natural state, if you like. And we're using every part of the tyre, and we're also trying to reroute some of our domestic waste and some of the waste that we're producing in process of building here. All building sites have waste. We're trying to process all that through the tyre wall as well. So there we have it. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to sharing some more in a couple of weeks. Thanks.